question, just sort of going back to that campaign piece. So I know that it was a very negative campaign and a lot of bullying on social media. How do you, how did you sustain yourself during that? And what kind of support could you have used from women and members in your community as you were going through that?
A good question. I had a really good kitchen cabinet, which is kind of your inner circle of your campaign team of, 4 or 5 people. One man and the rest, 3, 4 women. And honestly, the man gave me the most rah-rah boost kind of thing, cheerleading for me, because he recognized the bullying and the negative stuff just for what it was, and I wanted to take it to heart, and so I found him to be really helpful. So don't just think that women can give you advice, because I found that one male on my committee to be really, really helpful and helped me prepare for debates. I didn't want. He said, no, when your opponent says this, you have to go right back and get him with this, and see, I didn't think like that. I avoid conflict. And so the debate prep was one place he really helped me. But I think the way that women could do more is when they see that happening, to challenge it online and news, letters to the editor. But I had a lot of women just give me behind the scenes support. One of my friends who's a jewelry maker, she dropped off like 6 pairs of really beautiful jewelry earrings for me, because she just felt like, I want to do something for you to make you feel better. And another person who is a consultant for lingerie, she brought me some new lingerie. It was kind of fun, but I got cards like that and notes and gifts as well, and those were really uplifting too.
I love it. Heidi, do you have a question, comment?
Hi, Rita. Good to see you.
Hi, Heidi.
Do you feel that
Heidi, we can't hear you very well. Gotta just speak up a little bit.
Talk louder.
I'm not sure which microphone my computer I sold. I'm working on this computer and I have my spare computer here. So let me see if this is a little bit better. Is that a little bit better?
I can hear you.
Yep.
So my question is, do you think that the opposition was awful to you? I mean, it was the ugliest election ever. It was a shame. And I politically tend to be on the other side, so I feel like it's one of those positions that I think integrity was compromised on all sides. I was very disappointed. But do you think the negative attack based on was party based, or because you were a woman, or both?
So the question was, do I think the negative that came out in that Senate campaign, which Heidi agreed was bad, was because I was a woman or because it was party? And I think it was the party, because if you looked at the ads across the state, it didn't matter if it was male or female. They had the same ad with a different face and name for all of the candidates in the opposing party. So I do think, though, that they spent more money in my district because I was a woman, and they felt like that might have been a leg up for me, and so they wanted to make sure they defeated a female. That's just in my head. I don't know if that's true or not, Heidi, but I felt like they did use the same kind of negative ads across the state against people in my party. But the fact that I was a woman might have been that they spent more on my race than others. They thought I was a viable candidate. I was well known across the district. I had worked in the area because of my DNR work. I had worked in the Senate district a lot, and I knew a lot of folks. And so I think they just targeted me a little bit more heavily.
That's what I was going to say, is you're well respected, you're well known, you have great relationships with people you've worked with for many, many years. And I think that was probably why the attacks were brutal, is because you were a bigger threat than a lot of other people. And yeah, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't happy with it.
Yeah, Heidi says that because I had worked in the area, I lived in the area, I was from the area, I grew up here, I went to school. My dad was a school principal and or elementary principal and teacher. I had a lot of connections through my DNR work. She said, you know, you had that relationship, and that's why I was a bigger threat. And I agree. I think that's part of the reason they spent so much money against me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You know, and Rita, thinking through that, just to follow up on Heidi's comments. So it's a brutal thing to go through, but when you think about public service, and you touched on this, it's like, I believe, of course, and I know you do too, that we need more women engaged. What makes it worth it? What makes it worth going through some of these campaigns to be in public service? Why is it worth it for somebody on this call to go for it?
I think it's the same as any career choice or parenting choice. You feel like I could be a great mom. I could be a great, teacher, and you feel like you have the skill set that will help your community be better. And that's what I was looking at. I was looking at, I can remember a time when it was before I had gone back to school, and someone came knocking on my door. My friend Barb Mears, as it turned out, somebody I didn't know at the time, but we became friends. She was running for city council the very first time back in like 2000. I want to say 2002, maybe. Anyway, maybe before that. But in any case, she came knocking on the door. She was running for city council, and I just harangued her about, we need to do this with parks. We need to do this with streets. We need to do this with such and such. Why in the world is the city doing this? And she said, you should be running for city council. And so that was really one of the first people that planted the seed in my head, was another woman who was actually running for office. But I think women, especially, and most public servants want to run for office because they feel like they can make their community better. They're doing it for the reasons that we want them to, and that is that they can do a job that will help move their community in a way that will improve people's lives, make our community safer, make our streets safer, or make our parks better, or our water safe to drink, that kind of thing. I did have one campaign where the opponent said, gee, I was shaking his hand. I'm surprised to hear you're running. We just saw each other 2 days ago, and you didn't mention that you were going to announce today, and I said, what makes you want to run for mayor? And he says, oh, it's always been on my bucket list. And I thought, that's the worst reason in the whole world. That's not the reason to run for mayor. But in any case, I defeated him that time, but maybe because he just didn't have the compelling reason to run for mayor.
I love it. I love it. I know our time's coming to a close here pretty soon, Rita, and I just want to thank you for sharing your story. And as you know, I just think that there's so many different paths to leadership and how we can better support each other. And I just want to give you, is there anything you want to, any parting advice, parting thoughts that you have for us today?
Sure. One thing I didn't mention is what compelled me to run for city council in the first place. Back in 2010, when I decided to run for city council, we have a ward system here, so I was in Ward 4, and the Ward 4 council member was up for re-election. And what happened in 2009, I worked for the city of Bemidji as a community development director. And I wanted to do an affordable housing project very close to the neighborhood of one of the city council members. And he was completely opposed to this. He was angry that I was proposing that on the city-owned property, that we would sell it to the Headwaters Regional Development Commission and put a nice neighborhood of affordable homes in there. He was on a tear about that. And so at their budget session in August that year, he suggested that we line item out the community development director position and budget, which was like $100,000. And they voted yes to do that. And so they said, you know, you're funded through the end of the year. You can stay through the end of the year. But after that, your job is done. So basically I was fired literally. But they gave me, 4 months to to work out the end of to the December 31st, because my budget was good for that year. But 2010, there was no budget for me, so I was going to be out of a job. And so I worked through the end of 2009, and in 2010, I did some extra work for my degree to be for a planner. I went through a master's program to do the certified planner certificate, and so that was fun, and I got that done. But it occurred to me in 2010 then that Ward 4, the ward council member who had led the charge to get rid of my budget was up for re-election, and I thought, that would be pretty good karma if I were to run for council and beat him and knock him off the city council and sit on city council. And so actually that's what happened. I ran for Ward 4, and I was elected to city council that year, and I knocked him off, and he was shocked. He was shocked that I could do that. But people were upset that they had they had line item out my budget, because the downtown association, the chamber, they came to city council and came to the podium, and they said, you can't get rid of our community development director. We need that person for blah, 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 so I had a lot of community support, and I had done a good job of networking in the community prior to that. So I prevailed, and that was something that kind of felt good. I'm not a revengeful person, or I don't hold a grudge, that kind of thing. I tend to, want to turn the page and move on. That's done. Let's go forward. I'm looking forward, not backward. So that was kind of rewarding for me.
Thanks for sharing that, because of course that was a question I was going to ask you, and I blew right past it, because it is always really interesting with elected officials to find out, why did you run?
Why did I run for mayor?
Yeah.
I was happy being a city council person, but we had elected, the year I was elected mayor, we had elected a gentleman who had only lived in town like 2 years. He wasn't engaged in the community, but somehow, the mayor that we had ran for a different seat. So it was an open seat, and this guy got elected. And like 2 days before filing ended, when the mayor's term was up, I had calls from people. You have to run. We have somebody in charge of our city that doesn't even understand our city, And I'm not one who thinks you have to be born and raised in the community to believe that you can help be a leader there. But this person was such a new person. I had many calls asking me to run. And so that's why I did, because people asked me to.
And I do think that's a common theme with women too, is a lot of times we have to be asked numerous times, and know that we have support before we'll step in, where
right.
Men will just sort of like, oh yeah, I'd try that. I'd give that a try.
That's on my bucket list. I think I'll run. I think I'll be the mayor.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rita. And I want to be careful on everybody's time. I appreciate everybody joining this morning. Delaney's going to pop in the chat our series. So as I mentioned earlier, we did our first 50 meetings to influence what our next 50 meetings are going to be. We're working on 4 categories right now. We're testing out different topics, forums, formats, times, but we have this series. This is on Fridays to lift up different women leading and sharing their journeys. We also are doing some open networking on Thursday mornings, where we heard from women, we just want a place to get together and talk. We've been doing that. We also have some themed networking, where we're taking issues that we heard in the first 50 and doing more open networking around a theme. And next week it's going to be education, and that's Monday at 4. And then through Andy Sutton, who's on our call today, we were able to connect with Andy's mom, Jan, and she and Elisa, a colleague of hers, are putting on some wellness sessions. So we're doing those 4 days a week. Please take 30 minutes out of your day to participate. We do them at 8 and 12. 8 and the first Monday and Tuesday at 8 and 12 are yoga, but it's really mind and body movement. So it's not your traditional yoga, but it's a lot of breathing, stretching, and that's incredible. And it's just 30 minutes to step away from your day. And then Wednesdays and Thursdays, We're also doing more meditation, relaxation, and we've been doing sort of sitting meditation. We're going to be doing walking meditation. So we just feel very fortunate to be able to offer these. So we're doing 7 convenings a week. It sounds sort of wild, but we just want to test things out and see what really helps women and what, this is what people are asking for. So we just want to figure out how we can best support each other as women. So I just want to thank everybody for coming this morning, and this session is being recorded. I did have, I have people who couldn't make it this morning who wanted to be part of it. So I just want to thank you, Rita, for sharing your story today, and just want to thank everybody for joining. So have a great weekend and hope to see you at some future events. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.